I've been away this week. I've been away on my birthday. Just a little plug there. How about that? No, I've been away at a conference this week, so I had to stay over. I stayed over one night, and it was in Harrogate, and I had to book myself a hotel, as you do, obviously. And it was a nice place. The pictures look good online, and I won't name it or anything, but it was an older place. So I booked in. I left it last minute, as you do. So I found this hotel, and I went back in the evening after the conference had finished for the day. So about 10, 11 in the evening, and I'm walking back to the hotel. So it's dark, and it's a very old building, quite imposing. And as I'm walking past the windows to the reception, I see these older people just wandering around. And first I'm thinking, a bit late to be wandering around, isn't it? What do they do? At 11 p.m. I'm shattered by then. But the clothes they were wearing looked like very old-fashioned. I'm talking feathers in hair and all that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? Because I'm in a hoodie, okay? So I go in, and there's just all these people wandering around doing things, and they're looking at me a little bit like, because I'm in a hoodie, and they're in this lovely attire. The hotel I stayed at? It's an Agatha Christie murder mystery hotel. So can you imagine what that was like? So everyone's just out doing a role play, a murder mystery, and I'm just there in my hoodie. I'm like, just checking in. Where's my room? And the looks I was getting, but it seemed like a nice place. It seemed like a lovely place. But I think people, they really enjoyed, putting on this costume and getting into it. And it was just speaking to me about some of the themes of the conference as well, which is knowing who you are. Because it's easy to put on masks, isn't it? To put on personas. It's easier to go to a murder mystery hotel by mistake and realize you're the only one not getting involved. But it's easy in the world to have different personas and masks. And one of our values here is to be authentic. And I know we say it regularly because I really believe that we can only come to God in an authentic way. If we're trying to put on a mask or a persona or an act, it just doesn't work. He sees straight through it, and it only harms us in the long run. Is that okay? Yeah? You're with me? Now, I wanted to look at 3 stories that Jesus tells. Because as we know, we'll talk about this a lot. He just caused such a stir, didn't he? The Pharisees, they didn't like him. Because the Pharisees, they were the people that had this reputation. They had the image of being close to God. If you asked anyone in their society who is close to God, you would say it's the Pharisees. They've got the nice robes, they've got the money, they've got the reputation. They are the ones that are close to God. And yet Jesus comes on the scene, and he starts hanging around with, who does he hang around with? The sinners. Who are the sinners? That's us. The normal people. The people who realize, I'm not perfect. I am not perfect. See, that scary old word of sin, it simply means to miss the mark, doesn't it? Have you ever missed the mark at any point in life? No. A few. Yeah, I have. I know what it feels like to miss the mark. Now Jesus, he comes and he starts having dinner with these people, with the sinners and the Pharisees. They don't like it. They're getting all frustrated. Like, Jesus, what are you doing? The things you're saying, you're changing our system, you're changing our structure, you're telling people that God loves them, and they're not even keeping the law. So they didn't like that. Can you imagine? And in response, he tells 3 stories. He knows they're listening, and he tells 3 stories. First, he talks about the lost coin. I won't go into those in depth. I'm going to focus on the last one. But the lost coin, about how someone will turn their house upside down looking for a lost coin. Then he tells a story about the lost sheep. How he says, okay, you've got a shepherd, you've got a farmer, he's got 100 sheep. Great. Fantastic. One goes missing. How do you respond? Well, I've still got 99 more, so I'll leave that one. No. Jesus says no. What the farmer does is he goes out of his way. He searches and pursues looking for that one lost sheep. I mean, how many of us would do that if we're being honest? It doesn't seem like a sensible business. Tim would. That's great. It doesn't seem like a sensible business decision, does it? But he's trying to get this point across, like, no, that lost sheep is so important to me. They are so important to me. And then he goes on to the third story, which I'll come on shortly. But Jesus knew that there was an illusion around the Pharisees. Not that they were all bad. It's probably unfair to say they're all these, evil, pantomime, villain-esque people. Many of them probably thought they were just doing the right thing. It's how they'd been brought up. It's what they were used to. It's how they'd be conditioned. Systems are strong, and they were in a very strong religious system. But he did say they've got this illusion of being close to God. And Scripture says, from Matthew 5:8-9, it says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. So he's really trying to get this image, trying to paint, get to the root, get to the heart of the matter. Does that make sense? Have we ever experienced that in life? Someone who's good at saying one thing, someone who's good at saying the right things, but then they live a completely different way. You've seen that, maybe? Some places? Yeah? So he's trying to bring this consistency. He's trying to bring this continuity. Look, we've got to know who we are, and we've got to be who we are. It's not enough to just speak it. Though words are important, and sometimes we need to encourage ourselves with our words, but he needs this consistency. There's no point just putting on this act, this facade. There's no point just honoring God with our lips on a Sunday, but then we go away on Monday and our hearts are far from him. He says, look, I want a lifestyle where we are just together. On the Monday, on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday, on the Thursday, just together. So there's strength in authenticity. So the first point is foundations of favor. One of the themes of the conference is knowing who you are. Because I think in the world, in society, if we're being honest, labels can be really powerful, can't they? Like I've said before, a lot of us, we love to think we're these sovereign, really strong-willed people. Some of us are, but many of us, we are affected by labels. We are affected by what people call us. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever had a negative label put on you? Yeah. It sucks, doesn't it? We like to think, no, it doesn't affect me. I don't need to listen to that. But when people put a label on you, it can affect you. Even if you don't take it upon yourself, it affects you. It can try and take a root in your identity. Sociologist Esther can tell you this better than me because she is the sociologist. But they look at the theories of label, and they're so powerful. And when you look at self-fulfilling prophecies, it's so powerful. It has such an effect on us, on the mind. And anyone who's ever been through a tough time or a struggle, and in fact, I remember one of our lecturers at Bible college, he was saying now, when he was a kid, he was bullied really severely. And I suppose anyone who's ever been bullied knows that does not feel good, does it? And he was saying that when he was younger, he'd been bullied severely. And for many years, he just kind of thought it was fine. He was over it. It happened when he was a kid. And he said he got to a point in his life, much later on, and for whatever reason, something just triggered him. And all of those feelings, all of those labels that people had put on him many years before, they just flooded to the surface. And he said it really just broke him for a season. And he had to just really go back into his identity to know who he was. Because labels, they do have an effect. And when we're in an environment where we don't feel valued, where we don't feel loved, that can really affect you. Has anyone ever felt the bad end of the religious spirit? You ever been judged? Yeah? No? Some of us. Have you ever been judged in the church or outside of the church? It doesn't feel good, does it? There is a place for judgment, but when you look at the Bible, it's very protected. It's usually by people that love you, that know you, that care for you. It's not this, I'm a stranger, I'm just going to come to you and condemn you. It's usually in a very secure manner, which means I am aiming to build you up. Not in a way to tear you down. So the Pharisees, they were there and they were just putting all these names out there. Jesus, why are you hanging out with these people? You don't need to hang out with these people. These people are not important. They were the neglected, the oppressed, the voiceless. They were the people in society that no one else wanted anything to do with. And we found God in the flesh going to have dinner with them. How does that sit with you right now? Is it encouraging? Is it, you don't know? It's encouraging for us because I've seen so many people that just get put off church, put off God, because whether people mean to or not, they're bringing a religious spirit that's almost implying, even if it's not said, it's almost implying, you need to get your act together before you come to God, let me tell you. Before you come to the holy table, to Holy Communion, you need to get your act together. Have you seen that? Some of us have. If you've been through it, if you've experienced it, you know it. And yet we see Jesus, here he is going to those that need him the most. You know, who is a doctor there for? The sick. The doctor is there for those that need him. We don't send the doctor into a group of healthy people and say, just do your work here today. You send him where he's needed. Yeah? Now, knowing who you are. See, God calls us sons and daughters. If there's any label we need today, it's that you're a son, that you're a daughter of God. Because when you're a son, when you're a daughter, there's such power, there's such authority. When you're family, there's such power. See, I know all of our families are different in the world, in an earthly sense, but if we've had a good family, if we've had a good experience, it can really give us a good image of God and the kingdom of heaven. See, my mum, we've got an open door policy, you see. So I've got a key to the house, and just whenever I want, I can just go in. And someone else, we might also be in that position. But it's an open door policy. So usually when our visitors come in, do you like a bit of notice? Who likes a bit of notice? Someone's coming over. Would you appreciate a phone call? Okay, who wants me to just drop by at any point in the week? Yeah. Pam. Okay, I'll remember that. Most of us, we like a little bit of notice, at least a text, because we need to start, you've got to tidy up a little bit. You've got to pretend you're clean. You've got to give the illusion of looking after your house. We like to do this stuff, but with family, with my mum, obviously it's a different relationship. It's open door policy. And with God, with Jesus, I want to suggest it's the same. It is an open door policy. And there's so much strength in that. He's not saying, look, you need to give me a heads up before you're coming to talk to me, all right? Because I don't know if I've got the mental capacity right now to deal with all the things you bring, all right? He's saying, no, my door is open anytime. Just come to me. And then he moves on to this third story, which is really it's so well known, and we talk about it a lot here, and I think it's so important because it encapsulates the entirety of the Bible. The Bible is a big, complex book, but in a simple form, it's this story, and it's the parable of the prodigal son, the lost son. And we have this story, this situation. I'll just explain it briefly. We've got another farmer, it's a different time. They loved farmers, shepherds, shepherd everywhere. And he's got his farm, his ranch, and he's got two sons. And then the day comes where one of his sons, he's a bit more unsettled, he's got ideas for his life. He's feeling a bit unsettled. And one son, he's great, he's working the farm, he's just, he wants to take over the family business probably. But this other son, he comes to his dad, and he says, look, Dad, I appreciate everything we've got here, but I would like my inheritance, and I'd like it now. I mean, that's quite a thing to do today. Can you appreciate that? You go to a parent and you say, I want my inheritance, okay? that's quite a very sensitive, that is a difficult, almost depending on the dynamics, that could be quite a rude thing to do right now. In that culture, let me tell you, it was terrible. It was basically saying, it's time for you to go, okay? It's time for there to be a change. And what gets me in this system, in this story, is when Jesus is telling it straight away, the Father does not say, you cheeky swine on your bike. He does not say, absolutely not. It probably breaks his heart, but he says, okay. He says, you want your inheritance? Fine, I'll give it to you. It wouldn't be my plan for you. If you asked me what I've got planned for you, it wouldn't be my plan. But if that's what you want from me, I'll give it to you. So he gets this inheritance, presumably a large sum of money, because the story says, he goes to a far off land and he starts enjoying his life. He starts spending his money. And, it says people gathered around him. I'm sure he had lots of people that wanted to be with him in the highs, as people do. Do people like to gather around you when things are going well? Yeah. And we're told, he's enjoying himself, he's having a good time, and he keeps spending this money, and it must not have been spent very wisely, because it goes down and 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 down, and dwindles until there's nothing left. And then those friends also disappear. And let me tell you, if friends disappear in the tough times, I think there's a message there, isn't there? You could see, even from a biblical point of view, maybe those people never loved you to begin with. So these people disappear, he's got nothing left, and he goes and he gets a job at another ranch, or looking after some pigs. And if you think you've hit rock bottom before, let's listen to this guy, because he says he got to the point where he could see the pigs eating the food, and he thought, I want some of that. He said, even these pigs have got it better than me, because they're looked after, they've got food, they know where their next meal's coming from. I mean, that's pretty rock bottom, right? Has anyone ever been envious of a pig? No, no, I'd expect not. So these thoughts must come across his mind, and he must have had that moment, that click, that actually I didn't have it as bad as I thought back home. What was I thinking? Have you had one of those moments before? Just what was I thinking? The penny drops. Thinks, oh, you know what? Back on the farm, on the ranch with my dad, with my brother, it really wasn't so bad. What was I thinking? Why was I so unhappy? So he gets this idea in his head. He says, look, I've shamed my dad so much, so he's never going to take me back as a son. But if I can go back, I'll prepare this speech and I'll say I'm sorry, and maybe if I'm lucky, he'll have mercy on me and he'll just take me back and give me a job on the farm. I can't come back as a son. I realize that I've destroyed that relationship, but maybe he'll have pity on me, have mercy, and I'll come back as a servant. So he must travel back, and though this part's not in the story, when you're trying to imagine things and picture things, what would you be like in this situation? My mind, it always goes to the father, and I just think his heart must have been broken. And in a modern setting, I just wonder if, every time that phone went, or there was a buzz or a knock at the door, do you think some part of him was thinking, is my son coming home? Because I think of Judah, and he's only 2, but you just love them so much, and you think, I would hate if he wanted to leave one day. I know they all have to leave at some point, but I mean cut ties. Because he's my son, he's my boy. He doesn't need to do anything to impress me. He's just got my heart. And I think this father must have been heartbroken that his little boy cut ties and went away. And I think every time the phone went, every time it buzzed, did he think, just maybe at the back of his mind, is that my son? So I think, maybe he was sat outside one day, because the story goes that he sees this silhouette, this figure in the distance, and he knew instantly that it was his son. And he gets up and he runs over to him. And again, in this culture, a very different culture, you didn't run. We might think it's strange to run down the street now. Maybe you'd cross to the other side of the road if you just saw someone sprinting up. But in this culture, you didn't run because it was something that was beneath you. And he sees his son and he just runs over to him with arms wide open. And I think, how would the son have felt? Because he must have been thinking, oh my goodness, my dad's running over to me. And he's got this speech all ready and prepared, and he's ready to just give this speech. And before he can even get a word out, the father just wraps his arms around him, just puts his arms around him, puts a cloak around him, gives him the family ring and says, my son, my boy, you're back. And he's just so happy that he's come home. And I think you would be, wouldn't you? And he takes him back to the house and he prepares this meal, this feast, this banquet, and says, I want everyone on the ranch right now, everyone on the farm to just celebrate that you have come home. And we can look at this story. We know it well. It's easy to gloss over. It's easy to just to gloss over. And we can get the meaning. Yeah, okay, God always wants us to come back. But that is a huge thing. That's not something to just gloss over. Because in this story, God is saying, actually, we have all been that lost son. We have all been that person. In our own way, we have all said, God, I don't want to go your way. I want to go my way. And actually, I still want your blessing to bless me on this path that I'm going to take, even though you're not in it. And if he sees us as sons and daughters, which it says he does, then how much would his heart be breaking for what takes place? Because he says, you might not get it, you might not understand it, but every day I just sit and I'm just waiting for my son, for my daughter to come home. Now, as I said, for those of us who've experienced a hurt, a rejection, for those of us who've experienced that religious judgment, that critical, mean spirit, it can just put people off, can't it? It can hurt people, it can break people. And Jesus is saying, look, I know we're not perfect. I know we might not get it right all the time, but my arms are open. Which is point 2, that his arms are always open. Are we quick to use that? Because shame, it drives us away from God. I know in difficult seasons that I've been going through, or there's a shame, there's a voice that can come and say, look, you're failing in this area. God doesn't want to fail you. God doesn't want someone like you. God wants someone better. God wants someone more qualified or more experienced, or someone with more passion or energy, or someone who's not made this mistake before. But where does that voice come from? The enemy. It was the enemy originally in the Garden of Eden, the story goes, that said, but did God say that? Did he say that? Sometimes we can receive a word from God, we receive something, but it tries to get taken from us because the enemy is quick to come and say, I don't know if God said that. And it gives us doubt, it gives us insecurity. But Jesus is saying to us this morning, my arms are open, but come. You've got to come. That lost son, he had to come home. He couldn't just stay where he was. He had to come home to the Father. There was an action that he had to take to just come back. Is that okay? And then point 3, my last point, is for many of us, we might have been in this situation, we might have been in the church circles, faith a long time, but for many of us, we've got to develop a spiritual maturity as well, because we don't just stay at the place of returning home. See, the other son, he's an interesting character, because he got a little bit upset that all this attention was being shown to this lost son. Maybe you can imagine that. You think, why are you celebrating this person that turned your back on us? You like think, Dad, look, he left, okay? I'm the one that's been here all these years. I've been serving you faithfully, okay? And this lazy, no good fool comes back and you're all hitting the roof. You think it's incredible. Can you understand that? See, this other son, in many ways, maybe from an earthly point of view, he had a good point. Because he'd been good, he'd been faithful. But it's also scratching at that other part that for many of us in this church world, in this faith, we can become like that. We can get into a place, get into a spirit where it can offend us to be more excited in a way about someone coming to faith than me turning up every week. And the truth is that the good son, he had forgotten who he was. He'd forgotten that he was a son. He's already a son. He's upset that the lost son is being celebrated, coming back home as a son, and he forgets in his own identity that I'm already a son. That you're already family. You've got it. Does that make sense? See, for many of us this morning, we're already family. We're already sons and daughters, but the idea of a message or a service or something that is to help someone come into this place to find the same thing we've got can sometimes offend us. You can think, well, this isn't for me, clearly. But we're speaking to our identity, to know who we are. He knows that we've served faithfully. He knows what you're going through. You know, there's a reason he's the good father, because many of us, we go through situations and no one will ever know. We never get thanks for it. We never get praise for it. Many of us could probably name something we've been for, and we can say, look, you don't know my struggle. Because most of us, we probably don't know each other's struggle, each other's journey to that extent, but God, he does know. He sees the struggle. He knows what you're going through. And he says, I'm right there with you. I remember a preacher once telling a story, and he had, I think he had 5 kids, something like that. I mean, that is some going, isn't it? I mean, Judah can be a handful. I don't know how I'd go with 5. And he said, as they got a bit older, he came to a point where they were just out and about shopping, doing what they do, and one of their kids just wandered off. And that must be absolutely terrifying. Not experienced that yet, but not looking forward to the day where you've sort of misplaced a child. And he said, rightly so, the whole family, they were just, oh my goodness, we've got to find our kid. What is going on? Where is our kid right now? And they were retracing steps. They were going around town. They were ringing people up. And the story is, obviously, thankfully, they eventually found him, but he was trying to paint this picture that, how would you have reacted to him if he'd have said, look, it's fine that I've lost one. I've got 4 more. You know, those numbers are still pretty good. 4 is still more than most. So it doesn't matter that I've lost one. He was giving us all this picture, saying, actually, I can understand why there was a sense of urgency over that lost kid.